From regularly humiliating some of the best fighters in the world to her explosive submission skill set and dominant striking abilities, this is the real reason Amanda Nunes is feared by UFC fighters. Let's take a look at one of the most dominant and terrifying fighters in the history of the UFC. Thanks to her quick striking power and well-rounded nature, Amanda Nunes has humiliated her opponents with ease. But did you know, Nunes has successfully defended her bantamweight and featherweight titles 7 frickin' times? She instills fear in her opponents every time she steps into the octagon and remains the #1 ranked women's fighter in the UFC. Despite being at the tail end of her prime, Nunes remains the undisputed bantamweight champion. Also known as the Lioness, Nunes is as dominant a force as they come. She's taken down the likes of Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm, and Chris Cyborg Justino. Her exceptional record of 15 wins and 2 losses doesn't even begin to do her justice. She became the first woman to hold 2 championships in a separate division at the same damn time. Nunes is the real deal, and it's no surprise why she regularly embarrasses her opponents at will. But it's not just her championship titles that strike fear into the rest of the UFC. It's her ability to finish off her opponents even when she's losing for the majority of the fight. Most of Nunes' contests end with her opponents dazed and confused. She not only has the capability to finish off fights, but she does so in a devastating fashion. But her track record for ending contests in a moment's notice has truly made her one of the most feared fighters of all time. In fact, her first UFC fight ended just a minute into the contest as the Lioness unleashed havoc on the trembling Sheila Gaff. 5 of her next 6 fights ended in the first round, with Nunes coming out on top via knockout. Her knockout power is no joke, packing a serious punch in both fists. Her weaker hand is anything but weak, as she rapidly changes up her approach, switching between traditional and southpaw stances. Nunes' striking power can end fights in the blink of an eye. Let's not forget about one of her crushing signature moves, her vicious barrage of elbows. Nunes is as feared as some of the greatest fighters in the history of the sport, with precise striking and technical superiority. Back in 2016, Ronda Rousey was the talk of the town. UFC color commentator Joe Rogan almost cried giving her an interview, amazed by her stellar abilities, until Nunes showed Rousey who was boss. All of that praise for Ronda went out of the window after Nunes knocked her out within just 48 seconds of their bout. The Brazilian superstar even said, "When I landed the first shot, I felt she was done. Her eyes showed me that. I saw fear." Don't forget, the Lioness was defending her bantamweight belt and silenced all of her doubters by taking down Rousey. When anyone steps into the cage with Nunes, they're typically seen quaking in their boots. However, it's not just her incredible technical striking skills that make her so feared. Nunes is a top-notch submission artist and ground game specialist. She's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, relentlessly controlling fights on the ground and leaving very few windows of opportunity for her opponents. Back in 2015, arguably her best era as a fighter, Nunes won consecutive fights against Sarah McMahon and Valentina Shevchenko. She eviscerated McMahon, submitting her opponent with a rear naked choke just 2 minutes into the match. McMahon, who is a former Olympic wrestler, stood no chance against her Brazilian opponent. The fight was over before it even began, as Nunes did her part and showed off her multifaceted talents in the octagon. About 6 months later, Nunes faced her most difficult test yet. She was set to square off against Shevchenko, who was on an absolute tear at the time. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master went to frickin' work and dominated the entire fight. Shevchenko managed to survive the length of the contest, but ultimately lost via unanimous decision. Nunes' grappling skills were put to the test against some truly high-level fighters, yet no one could compete with her. Once she manages to get a solid position, it's just a matter of time before the referee flies in to stop the contest. Another part of Nunes' game that makes her so scary is her mental fortitude. She is as confident a fighter as we've ever seen, maintaining her composure regardless of the fight's current trajectory. Nunes has regularly come from behind to emerge victorious, proving that she can never be counted out. Her extremely calm demeanor and composure can confuse and intimidate fighters, forcing them to second-guess themselves. It feels like her challengers expect to get knocked out, staring into the fierce yet relaxed eyes of Nunes. She has an unmatched level of self-belief, which is the last thing you want to see in an opponent. Her experience and immense awareness in the octagon make her a truly daunting fighter. At the ripe age of 34, the Lioness has over a decade of UFC experience experience, and her resume boasts over 15 years in professional MMA. Her unique ability to adapt and prepare for title challengers explains why she's held onto her belts for so friggin' long. There's a unique invincibility to her game, warding off challengers and striking fear into anyone that dares enter the ring with the champion. Another aspect of her style that is so damn terrifying is her ability to make adjustments mid-fight. In her most recent title defense against Juliana Pena, Nunes was out for revenge. She faced her first defeat in over 7 years when Pena unexpectedly choked her out in the second round of a title match. Just a few months later, Nunes adequately prepared and strategized for her rematch with Pena. During the fight in July of 2022, the Lioness came out with a vengeance, except Pena looked up for the challenge and consistently warded off a number of takedown attempts. After a couple of rounds, Nunes turned to her immense preparation and made a number of in-fight adjustments. She gained a psychological edge over Pena, who was second-guessing herself throughout the contest. After a series of back-and-forth blows, Nunes quickly flipped to the script. Her dedication and mental superiority shined bright as Nunes turned the fight on its head and reclaimed her bantamweight belt. She ended up winning via unanimous decision, but was inches away from a brutal knockout blow. Moving on, let's take a look at Nunes' insane physical attributes that make her such a petrifying fighter. Standing at 5'8" and sporting a reach of 69 inches, the Lioness typically boasts a substantial size advantage in the octagon. Since she fights in both the featherweight and bantamweight divisions, Nunes' imposing presence makes it very difficult to overpower. Her 69-inch reach allows her to strike from a distance and coax her opponents into making the first move. Once they've fallen for the bait, the Lioness pounces in a flash and takes control of the fight. Let's not forget, Nunes is the one and only fighter to simultaneously defend 2 UFC titles. She became notorious for her 5 bantamweight title defenses, while also maintaining featherweight champ honors. When other fighters step into the octagon with Nunes, it's easy for them to doubt their own capabilities. Although she's been defeated twice in her UFC career, her challengers know Nunes is practically unbeatable. Finally, her reputation as a knockout specialist striker and feared jiu-jitsu wizard is intimidating enough to win a fight before it's even begun. But where she truly thrives is her ground and pound game. The second she achieves top position, the fight is all but over. Even when her opponents are in half guard, Nunes sniffs out weaknesses with ease. Her ground and pound assaults typically lead to knockout blows, as the ferocity in her strikes are just too much to handle. The Lioness throws elbows, strikes to the head, nasty body blows, and simply overpowers anyone in her path. She's able to use her massive frame to control fights and stay consistent with her preparation. Nunes is the most terrifying and dedicated figure in the UFC, and there's no question why she's a 7-time champ. While Nunes is certainly not getting any younger, she continues to perform at a high level and shows no signs of slowing down. So, from her explosive submission skill set and dominant striking capabilities to regularly humiliating some of the best fighters in the world, that was the real reason Amanda Nunes is feared by UFC fighters.